crowd gathered at Buckingham Palace was buzzing with excitement, all eyes fixed on the stoic royal guard in his immaculate red tunic and tall bearskin hat. A little boy in a wheelchair, gripping the armrests with trembling anticipation, had inched his way to the very front. Everyone assumed they knew how the day would go. A crisp ceremony, guards marching in perfect unison, and not a single soldier breaking formation. But then, in one astonishing moment, a guard suddenly stepped off his post and headed straight toward the boy, leaving onlookers absolutely speechless. No one expected what was coming next, and when it happened, it took their breath away. The afternoon sun lit up the white stone of Buckingham Palace like polished marble, and crowds pressed shoulder to shoulder along the Mall, craning for the perfect view. Phones and cameras were already raised, ready to capture every detail of the changing of the guard. Among the sea of strangers, 9-year-old Liam sat in his wheelchair, clutching the armrest with one hand and a small flag with the other. Behind him, his mother stood protectively, her eyes filled with both pride and worry. For years, Liam had dreamed of seeing the royal guard not from behind a screen or in a book, but up close, close enough to hear the synchronized stomp of their boots echo through the gravel. But as the ceremony approached, the crowd thickened, and Liam found himself swallowed by a forest of legs, unable to see the soldiers he admired so much. Every attempt his mother made to ask people politely to give her son a bit of space was ignored. A few shrugged her off, others pretended not to hear, and some only pressed in tighter. Liam's heart dipped with every failed attempt, though his eyes remained fixed on that distant flash of red. He whispered almost to himself, "He's so brave, I wish I could be like that." Just when hope was slipping away, a commotion broke out behind them. A man carrying a heavy camera bag barreled through the line, snapping at people to move. "Out of the way, I need this shot," he barked, his tone harsh and entitled. Liam's mother tried to explain that her son couldn't move easily, but the man scoffed loudly. "I didn't travel all this way just to be stuck behind a kid in a chair." Murmurs of disapproval spread through the crowd, a few bystanders stepping in to shield Liam, but the man pressed on, shouldering his way forward. The tension hung thick in the air, made worse by the sharp contrast of the immovable guard standing only yards away, silent and watchful. People whispered, wondering if the soldier would remain the emotionless figure tradition demanded, or if there was a limit to what he would allow. Liam's small hand tightened on the flag, his eyes brimming with tears. That morning, he had begged his mother for just one picture, one moment where he could clearly see the guard. Now, with the cameraman blocking his view and mocking the situation, even that simple wish felt impossible. Summoning her courage, his mother spoke again, her voice trembling but steady. "Please, my boy has waited so long for this. Could you step aside, just for a moment?" Her words carried both desperation and grace, but whether they would be enough was still painfully uncertain. The man barked out a cruel laugh. "Your kid can see fine if you just roll him back a little." The crowd bristled, uneasy murmurs weaving through the silence. A teenage girl, phone lifted to record, whispered, "This is awful." Then, with smug bravado, the man turned his mockery on the guard, stiffening his body in imitation. "Look at him, can't even blink," he jeered, inching dangerously close to the soldier's face. The guard stood motionless, his rifle steady, the centuries-old training etched into every line of his posture. The rule was simple: never react. Onlookers gasped as the man leaned in, snapping photos inches from the guard's nose. They waited, half anxious, half morbidly curious, to see how long tradition could withstand provocation. Then his attention snapped back to Liam. He pointed rudely. "See, kid, this is all they do." He shoved his face toward the boy, making him flinch, then without warning kicked at Liam's wheelchair as though nudging him out of the way. The crowd froze, horrified, gasps cut the air. Liam's mother pulled her son close, fear plain in her face. The man sneered. "He's not going to move for you. These guards never break character." From the throng someone shouted, "Hey, leave them alone." Strangers instinctively shifted, forming a protective arc around Liam. A palace official at the edge of the courtyard hovered nervously, unsure how to act. The tension was unbearable. Could a soldier so bound by rigid protocol really stand still and watch? Liam's lip trembled, his small body quaking as he gripped the flag tighter. Quaking as he gripped the flag tighter, his mother squeezed his shoulder, whispering reassurance, though her own voice shook. For a heartbeat, time seemed to stall. Then, so subtle it was almost missed, the guard turned his head. Just slightly, just enough. The crowd erupted in hushed whispers. Did he just move? The tiny shift sent electricity through the air. If he had acknowledged them, what might happen next? The rude man, emboldened, reached for Liam's Union Jack flag, intent on waving it mockingly at the soldier. But his hand froze mid-air. In one decisive motion, the guard broke formation. He pivoted, stepping clean off the line that symbolized centuries of duty. The reaction was instant. Gasps, camera shutters, shouts of disbelief. Tourists who had expected a flawless display of ceremonial precision were now witnessing the impossible. The guard planted himself firmly between Liam and the man, towering, immovable, his presence like a wall of steel. The courtyard vibrated with collective heartbeat, the question burning in every mind. Had he truly broken protocol? Would the palace step in? Liam's wide eyes locked onto the soldier, awe and wonder mingling with fear. His mother's jaw hung open in shock, and the man, the loud, mocking man, wasn't so bold anymore. His voice cracked, muttering something that wavered between excuse and insult. No one could tell. The guard, silent but resolute, raised one white-gloved hand. The universal sign, stop. The courtyard was dead quiet now, breathless, the kind of silence that swallowed even the sounds of London traffic. The question echoed in every soul watching. Would the guard speak? Would he act? Or was this quiet defiance enough to end it all? That's when the guard stepped forward again, fully shielding Liam from the man's reach. For an instant, it seemed the situation might spiral, but then something subtle shifted. The soldier's gaze softened as it fell on the boy. It wasn't much, just a flicker, but it was enough for those paying close attention to notice a crack in the rigid mask he wore. And then, in a moment that seemed to suspend reality itself, the guard bent down on one knee. Gasps rippled through the crowd as the stoic figure, still gripping his rifle firmly in his right hand, rested his left on the armrest of Liam's wheelchair, steady and reassuring. A silence swept across the square, so deep it seemed even the air had paused. The once mocking man froze where he stood, all his bravado dissolving into stunned silence. The guard's voice, calm yet unexpectedly warm, broke through. "Are you all right, young man?" The boy's head bobbed in a timid nod, tears welling in his eyes. He had never expected the soldier he admired so deeply to even glance his way, let alone speak directly to him. The mother pressed a trembling hand to her chest, overwhelmed, her heartbeat thundering in her ears. Then the guard did something that made the crowd inhale sharply as one. He placed his white-gloved hand gently over Liam's smaller one, giving it the lightest squeeze. It wasn't a gesture of ceremony, but of pure humanity, and in that instant, centuries of rigid protocol faded into irrelevance. Camera shutters snapped, whispers fluttered like wind through the gathered crowd, and more than a few bystanders wiped away tears they hadn't expected. Even the palace official, who had looked ready to intervene moments earlier, simply stood still, head bowed slightly, as though he too had been struck by the significance of what he was witnessing. For a fleeting second, Buckingham Palace wasn't a monument of tradition and discipline. It was the backdrop to a rare moment of human connection. The man who had caused all the trouble mumbled something that might have been an apology, but no one cared anymore. All eyes were fixed on the soldier and the boy. Liam's voice, quiet but steady, reached out. "I just wanted to see you up close. I think you're so brave." The guard gave the slightest nod. "I'm just doing my duty, sir," he replied softly, the faintest trace of emotion in his otherwise even tone. Then another figure appeared. A second guard, his posture firm, his eyes sweeping from the kneeling soldier to the crowd. For a breathless moment, everyone wondered if discipline would reassert itself. Would this act of compassion be punished? The first guard rose slowly to his full height, standing ready, expression unreadable, but shoulders squared as though prepared for consequence. Liam's mother's breath caught in her throat, but instead of reprimand, the second guard inclined his head respectfully. Without a word, he shifted aside, granting his comrade the space to finish what he had started. Together, they moved Liam's chair closer to the front, ensuring he had a clear view of the soldiers assembling for the ceremony. It was a wordless confirmation that sometimes humanity outweighs ritual. The square erupted into applause, not raucous, but gentle, reverent, the kind that speaks of admiration rather than spectacle. The soldier's face betrayed no emotion, but a faint shimmer in his eyes told the truth. This mattered, perhaps more than any march or salute ever could. And Liam's expression, radiant with gratitude, was the proof that this one moment would live far longer in memory than any perfectly executed ceremony. As the ceremony carried on, the guard lingered just long enough to ensure Liam had the perfect view, from the thunder of synchronized boots on gravel to the gleam of polished brass buttons glinting in the sun. His mother, overcome with gratitude, whispered a trembling, "Thank you," tears finally rolling down her cheeks. The soldier answered with only the slightest nod, and somehow it was more powerful than 100 words. On the other side of the courtyard, the disruptive man who had caused the commotion earlier attempted to fade into the background, but palace officials intercepted him, escorting him quietly away as his earlier arrogance dissolved into visible shame. The ceremony itself concluded without a hitch, seamless and precise, yet for everyone who had been present, it no longer felt like just another tradition. It felt like they had witnessed something extraordinary. When it ended, the guard personally led Liam and his mother toward a calmer spot by the palace gates, clearing their path with quiet dignity. Phones were raised high, cameras clicking, videos streaming onto social media within minutes. Captions spread like wildfire, all echoing the same sentiment. Royal Guard breaks tradition to honor a boy in a wheelchair. Unforgettable. The atmosphere felt transformed, as though beneath all the ceremony and strict codes, compassion had briefly taken center stage. As Liam prepared to leave, the guard raised his hand in one final salute. The boy's entire face lit up as he proudly lifted his small flag in return, while his mother mouthed a tearful, "Thank you." Then, just as swiftly as he had broken protocol, the soldier returned to his motionless stance. But everyone knew they'd never look at him the same way again. The crowd, unable to contain themselves, burst into applause. For a fleeting moment, Buckingham Palace wasn't merely a fortress of monarchy, it was the backdrop of a rare, unforgettable human connection. That night, footage of the moment swept across the internet, collecting millions of views in only hours. News outlets everywhere replayed the scene, praising the guard's rare act of empathy. Some commentators debated the weight of tradition versus the necessity of compassion, but almost all agreed on one thing. What that soldier did had touched people around the world. Back at home, Liam replayed the clip endlessly on his mother's phone, his smile unshakable. When asked how he felt, he simply said, "I've never felt more seen." By the next morning, Buckingham Palace released an official statement acknowledging the event. They reaffirmed the importance of discipline and protocol, but they also admitted that, in exceptional cases, compassion could be just as important as duty. For many, it was a moment of reflection, a reminder that kindness has the power to cut through centuries of rigid tradition. If one soldier's choice to kneel could inspire so much hope and connection, what else might be possible when humanity comes first? For Liam, it wasn't just a dream fulfilled. It was living proof that sometimes the most extraordinary moments happen when someone dares to bend the rules for the sake of simple decency. His wheelchair rolled softly across the pavement as he left the palace, his heart lighter, his belief in magic renewed. After all, a soldier known across the world for being unshakable had moved just for him. So what do you think? Was it worth it for the guard to break centuries of tradition to honor one boy's dream? Should compassion outweigh custom when the moment calls for it? Tell us in the comments. Hit the like button if this story lifted your spirit, and share it with someone who could use a little inspiration today. And don't go anywhere. Our next story will leave you stunned. You won't believe what happened when a tourist tried to outmarch a royal guard during a parade. Make sure to subscribe so you don't miss another story that proves the true power of kindness.